wanted to kind of talk to you guys from our heart tonight about some different things and kind of go over a few of the things that we have discussed already, and also to give you some resources that I think will help you in your journey with marriage. And I asked Jen to be up here just because she has a lot of wisdom and a lot of course, perspective that I don't have on marriage. Of course, it's easy for a man to see things from his perspective all the time, but the women have a totally different perspective. And I've actually said to you several times, to my wife, that, she would joke sometimes and say that, well, I don't have these different, giftings. Like, I don't play music. You play all these instruments, you do this different stuff, and I don't have these gifts or whatever. And I said, you have the gift of wisdom. And I'm so thankful for that. And I wouldn't replace that with 1,000 other gifts. And I'm so grateful and thankful for that. So I love you.
I love you.
Okay, there we go. Just a little. It is marriage in the family. So we've talked about a few things. One of the things we started out by talking about the marriage covenant. And week one, we really focused on that and how the marriage covenant is what has to bind the whole thing together. And, I've said this before, that vows mean something. When you made a vow to a person, you made a covenant to them. And then we went on talking about servant versus selfish. And we talked about how, selfishness really is the number one killer of marriages and can destroy it. And it was funny because in that sermon, one of the things that I talked about was I just kind of casually mentioned, I thought that I would come home and sometimes you would mow the grass.
I thought it was casual.
Oh, it was casual. I wasn't trying to make a big deal about it. But I'm telling you, I had probably 4 or 5 people talk to me during the next week. Some of them wives saying, you put a lot of pressure on us. And then I had one person say, you preached that, and my wife went home and mowed the yard, and we were just wondering in the fall if you were going to talk about raking leaves, maybe then you get out there and do that too. And and I think you're missing the point, But why don't you just, from your perspective, kind of share? Because a lot of people had that feedback, and you're the one that did it. So just why? What's going through your mind?
Truthfully, no. I love Joshua, and he has, the way the church works, he works Sunday through Thursday, so we have Friday and Saturday off. And if he's got to mow the grass, then we don't get to hang out on Friday and Saturday. I don't always mow the grass. That's my disclaimer. But occasionally I do, and especially when the kids are out of school, because we're like, hey, we want to hang out today. And then if Dad's doing yard work all day, you don't get that time. So I love my husband and I love my kids. My kids really, I don't know if your kids feel this way, they really enjoy, when he comes through the door, I've heard several moms say that, it's different. He's got the authority. They listen to him. They listen to him naturally. I don't know what it is with dads. But when he comes through the door, it's like Christmas sometimes. They're like, hey, Dad. And so, when they're excited and I'm excited, we want to spend time with him.
Amen.
Can I have a phone?
And then we talked about, of course, Pastor John, and you need your phone?
Yes.
Oh, you had your
I can
notes
look at the
there.
website.
Oh. And then Pastor John and Miss Sandy were here, and then we talked about faithfulness in marriage and, not violating that covenant. And I guess the one thing that we kind of wanted to touch on tonight is that, in 5 weeks, and us spending 5 weeks together talking about different subjects, of course, everything cannot be covered. And I'm sure there are people here that were going through something that didn't get mentioned. Even, this is our 3rd year to do this. And it's very possible that there's something that you guys are going through in particular that hasn't really been talked about or hasn't really been mentioned. And obviously, we can't just cover everything in 5 weeks. So we wanted to just give you some resources that have really helped us, that have been a blessing to us, because I'll let you talk about this, but I know one of the things that we hear sometimes we kind of joke about, this kind of a ridiculous statement, is sometimes people will say, well, y'all just, that's y'all just have a good marriage, though. And I'm like, well, how do you think it got that way? Like, we're just born with it? Or then we'll say that with our kids, too. They'll say, we're talking about discipline or something, they'll say, oh, yeah, but your kids are just good. I'm like, that's crazy. We had to work at, our kids are just like everyone else's kids. Our marriage is just like everyone else's marriage, and it's something that we've had to work at. It's something that we invest in and that we spend time on, and we definitely don't have the perfect marriage, and we certainly don't have the perfect kids.
Certainly.
But it is something that we've worked hard at, and that we spend a lot of time investing. We read about it. I would say probably the thing that we do most to invest in our marriage is listen to sermons. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things that we wanted to give you tonight, is some of the sermons, books that have really helped us, that have been a blessing to us, that we've recommended to other people, that as you continue, this journey, because it's 5 weeks, yes, but it's really 12-month pursuit. It's year round. You never take a break from investing in your marriage. You never take a break from investing in your family, or you shouldn't. So now this PDF that we created is going to be on the website. It's actually already on the website. If you go to our website, onelifechurchalexandria.com, there's a banner in the center of the screen at the bottom that says Built to Last. When you click on it, you'll see this PDF pull up with all of these links to every single thing that we're going to mention tonight. So the first category we wanted to talk about was just general marriage. And the one marriage series that's really helped us is by a man his name's Mark Driscoll, and the name of the series is called Real Marriage. And the link for that is on this PDF. And he talks about, it's just, he goes through, it's probably 11 sermon series, and he goes through, everything that you can imagine on marriage, and just very practical, very biblical, very helpful. He and his wife answer questions, and it's just an awesome series that's really helped us. And the other one is by a pastor. His name is Keith Moore in Branson, Missouri, and he does marriage enrichment every year at his church, and he's been pastoring for a lot longer than us. And so he started this in 2003, doing marriage enrichment every year, and he's done them 2003 through 2015. So I gave you the link for that there. You can go find that, and we haven't listened to all of them, but we've listened to quite a few of his as well. He's a little older, comes from totally different style, but the Word of God is just so practical and so good, and it's really benefited us as well.
I would say is this too loud? I would say that the number one thing that we do as Christians, and especially in our marriage, is just these sermon series. We're busy people. I'm sure you guys are just as busy, if not more. So even the books he's going to recommend, you can do audio books, you can do these sermons. We don't even have a long commute, but what he'll do on the way to the gym, it's only 10 miles. He'll listen on the way to the gym for 10 minutes, on the way back. So in a week he's got a sermon covered. These sermons are 30 to 45 minutes. Keith Moore is a little longer, but I would recommend doing that if you want to grow in your passion for your marriage. The thing that you think about is the thing that you're going to be hungry for. I love desserts. If I sit here and think about my favorite dessert, I'm not going to be able to fight the craving. There's a Walmart, I'm going to get my dessert, And so if you want a better marriage, then you have to think on the marriage. How am I going to get the better marriage? And these CDs, and not CDs, I am old school. Anyway, these audio digital downloads now available, I would use them, and they're very practical.
Absolutely, and I listen to them straight from my phone, or you can download them to CD if you need to have that. But what you're talking about is renewing your mind. And, of course, the Word of God is so clear about how important that is to renew your mind on a regular basis. So it's nothing for me to listen to, 2 or 3 sermons a day. And I'm not just doing it during the day while I'm working, but just the commute, when I'm getting dressed for work, when I'm driving, whatever, I'll listen to them, and it does. It helps you to renew your mind. So just general marriage, I would recommend those two, and we've listened to them more than once. So Real Marriage by Mark Driscoll, and then Marriage Enrichment by Keith Moore. Again, those will be on that PDF. Another big topic that we didn't really spend a lot of time covering this year is sexuality and intimacy. So we wanted to recommend, we've got 2 books to recommend that we've read that have been a blessing for us, and then a sermon that actually, if you listen to the whole Real Marriage series, you'll get this sermon, but just in case you didn't listen to the whole series, I went ahead and separated this particular sermon from that series because it'll really help you. So the first book that we would recommend is called Red Hot Monogamy, and it was good. We both read that one. You got anything you want to say about that?
It's red hot.
It's red hot. Yes,
they make
it was.
you blush a bit.
And then the second one is called Sheet Music, pun intended, sheet music, Uncovering the Secrets of Sexual Intimacy. And then the sermon that comes out of the Real Marriage series is called Sex, Is It God, Gross, or Gift? And he just really does a great job explaining God's design for sex, and then also he really breaks down some mindsets and some barriers that people have when it comes to sexuality.
I love the Mark Driscoll. I love Brother Keith as well. But Mark Driscoll and his wife, he tells the story of how their marriage struggled. 10 years into their marriage, he found out that she'd been raped, correct? So they had all these horrible issues, and come to find out she had been raped. So they really have an in-depth vantage point, I guess, because of what they had walked through. And then they had the victory. They have 6 kids. They got the victory. So.
And then the next category we have resources on raising kids and teenagers. And 2 books that we would recommend for that, they're by the same author, by Dr. Henry Cloud. First book is called Boundaries with Kids, When to Say Yes, How to Say No. The second book is called Boundaries with Teens, How to Say Yes and How to Say No. And so he's got one for kids, one for teens, whatever phase you're at. And it's very practical, very simple, very easy read, very easy to understand. It's just an excellent book on raising kids and teenagers. And you were actually telling me a story from, I think it was the Boundaries with Teens, about the kid not cleaning his room or something.
The author of the book had went to have dinner with a friend, and the friend had a teenager, and dinner's over, and he walks down the hall to find his friends, and the mother is in the teenager's room going around cleaning the room, making the bed, and he said she was so happy. They were talking, they were having a conversation. The teenager is sitting with their feet propped up, and she's just making circles, cleaning, and he said, I just stood in the doorway like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with this picture? And so then I guess she came out of the room, and he's like, she's like, what's that look on your face? And he said, I just feel so sorry for his wife. And, you think that as a mother, I know I'm like that. It's a little easier to just go in there and do it. But this book really talks about training them for the future and training them when they're married. What do you want? Let's not talk about anything non-loving, but what would you like to see your mother-in-law, my mom, have changed that would have made it easier to be married, and some of the little, I love how Lisa Bevere said, after 30 years of being married to John Bevere, she said, what used to be annoying, I've just called it cute, because after 35 years of marriage, it hasn't gone anywhere. So, we're there. Some things that are just, they're cute now because he's not going to change them. Same thing with me. But what if those things, really important things like work ethic, you instill in your child, and it's a blessing to their spouse? My dad, you mentioned the lawnmower, I was a tomboy. I was always out with my daddy, had my hand, greasy, muddy. And he taught me how to get my hands dirty and work. And so it really works for our relationship. Everyone is not going to mow. I did meet a lady, and it was so funny to hear her say, if my husband banned me from the mower because he was scared I was going to blow it up. So, know where your gifts are. But back to the book, with the boundaries and teaching work ethic, those things come in. And the simple lawnmower, that's a blessing. Is that rain?
I'm distracted by the rain.
It's raining.
Sounds like our after party's getting rained on.
Well, bubble balls indoors.
I'm sure Brandon will figure it out. We'll have the after party in the foyer. Don't worry about it. So yeah, boundaries with kids and teens. And as you guys know, raising kids and teenagers in this generation is a challenge. It's a very difficult challenge. And so these books are very helpful. We found them helpful, and I believe they'd be a blessing to you.
And I think, I know that moms and dads, you're giving it your best effort. So any input that you can have, even if it's a chapter is overwhelming, you know what season you're in, but if you have time, read the book, listen to the sermon, but just take a little bit. I sometimes in some seasons will take one page and it'll carry me for a month. So if you can't finish the whole book, don't get overwhelmed. I've been reading one book about raising boys for 5 years because I just can't finish it. It's like this thick. I've just been reading it for 5 years. So just keep at it. Don't quit.
Yeah, that's good. Another category we wanted to mention was the category of singleness, because we know this is marriage and family, and a lot of people come, they're like, well, I'm single. I'm not married, and it's difficult for us to spend an entire evening talking about singleness. But one of the books that I found really helpful on this subject is called The Mingling of Souls by Matt Chandler. And it's on the link there is on the PDF. But I think it would be a blessing. One of the things about being single, and this, we didn't put anything on there for widowhood, but I know sometimes in these meetings, we have people here that are widows, and this would apply in a sense as well to them, because the Bible is very clear that not everybody is called to be married, and even in certain seasons of your life, there are times where you're married and other times where you're not as a result of, maybe you're single before you got married, or the death of a loved one, or even a divorce. So what do you do in that time of singleness? What do you do when you're not married? Because you don't have to be married to serve God. You don't have to be married to live the life, but that's kind of how sometimes it's portrayed, is like you have to be married. But the fact is that God has a big plan for people who are single. And Paul is very clear about that he says your single years should be some of your most productive years, because you're able to devote more time to God. You're able to devote more time to, your Father, your Heavenly Father. And then when you get married, of course, you have to be more focused on your spouse and your kids and other things. So Paul's very clear that he said you don't have to be married. Paul wasn't married. Jesus wasn't married. And they were very productive, and their lives were fruitful. So this book, The Mingling of Souls, was really helpful on that. And I think that, some of you that are in that season may enjoy that. And the last category that we wanted to talk about was personal growth. So the reason that we put this here, and this is actually the biggest category when it comes to the resources, personal growth is sometimes overlooked in marriage seminars, because we think, well, we want to come and learn about marriage. We want to learn how to communicate. We want to learn about intimacy. We want to learn about raising kids and all these things. But here, the fact is that personal growth really supersedes anything that you're going to learn in a marriage conference, because the deeper relationship that you have with God, the better spouse that you're going to be. And if you're not pursuing a relationship with God in depth, and you're not growing in your prayer life, you're not growing in your spirituality, then you're going to struggle in marriage. The best marriage partners are the people who are most spiritually mature, the people that have a deep relationship with God, they have a deep prayer life. So we put a lot of resources on here that I think are things that have helped me personally with my spiritual walk. One of those books is called How You Can Be Led by the Spirit of God. And I recommend, this is probably the book that I recommend more to people who are starting out in the faith than any other book. How You Can Be Led by the Spirit of God. Because I think that being led by the Spirit is probably one of the most important qualities that a believer can develop. I mean, other than hearing the message of salvation and what happened on the cross, is knowing who the Holy Spirit is in you and how you can be led by that Spirit. In other words, how you can really hear the voice of God. Now, I'm not talking about hear with your audible ear, but to hear the voice of God and be led by the Spirit in the decisions that you make. And you can see how this would affect you greatly in your marriage. I mean, even just, since we've started this, it seems like every time that we start teaching on marriage and focusing on marriage, then the enemy really starts trying to work through you just to, really mess things up in our marriage. And I got to really just humble myself. No, I'm just kidding. But even in these last few weeks, just about, there's been interactions that we've had where I was going to say something and I didn't say it because I was led by the Spirit instead. And it's so much better to be led by the Spirit than it is to be led by the flesh. And it will help you in every area of your life, but certainly in your marriage. So that's number one. I recommend how you can be led by the Spirit.
That you say, the jab, the sharp word, I can't ever get it right, the pierces to the heart. He's really good. You guys see that he's really smart and intelligent. And if he wanted to send a zinger to me, he could make me cry in 30 seconds or less. But he really doesn't. You really don't. But he has that power. And there is a scripture, we're both blank, but it's talking about your words, and that your words can be so sharp that they pierce someone straight to the heart. And in this personal growth with being led by the Spirit, as a spouse, as a woman, as a man, when you know someone this close, you can say something, and even though they forgive you, it can hurt for months and years. I mean, there's been some damage done. So if you can be led by the Spirit in that moment to withhold, maybe I've struggled in the past years ago. I mean, we've been married 12 years. Years ago, I thought that I could kind of just spout off. That was my thing. I could get angry, and then I blow up, and then I just spout off and say what I want. He never does that. He's so steady and so calm. And so I've had to really grow in that, and even what I'm thinking,
Never is a big word, but yeah, I've worked on it. But the scripture you're talking about, it says, there is one whose rash words are like sword thrusts, but the tongue of the wise brings healing.
Yes.
What a different approach, and the being led by the Spirit helps you with that. Another book that I recommend all the time concerning personal growth is called The Bait of Satan, and this is about offense. It's about being easily offended, and the being easily offended is such a problem that we see in marriage, not just in marriage, but in people staying put, really even in churches where they ought to be planted. The enemy will come in and cause offense, and they'll break relationship with marriage partners. They'll break relationship with churches and pastors. They'll break relationship with friends over offense. Well, somebody said this, or they didn't do that when I thought they should have, or they didn't remember this, or they didn't call me back, or all these things. And this book, if you can read this whole book, you will basically be offense proof. And it's so just enlightening and so helpful. It's called The Bait of Satan, and I highly recommend it.
Well, I would just say we're all in our journey at different places, and you need to, not in a prideful way, but in Christ, roll your shoulders back and say, this is where I have been, this is where I am today, and this is where I'm going. And all the junk and people that try to put you down, or even that being offendable, is that a word? Being offendable, you made that up. Being offendable is something that will damage you, and the enemy will use against you. You think someone's thinking something. You think someone's saying something. You think someone's... I just promise you, people are not that concerned about that. At the gym, I have had to get over that looking like an idiot, because I didn't know, when I walked in, confession, I didn't know what a barbell was. They're like, get the barbell. I said, what is a barbell? Get the clip. Okay, I don't know what the clip is. So I had to get over real quick looking stupid, because I look stupid every class. So, when you are easily offended and you've been through stuff, you're going to think people are thinking things. You're going to think and they're not. And mostly because they're so worried about themselves, So just relaxing in who you are, these kind of resources help you with that. Just take a breath.
Absolutely. There's more resources on here, but the last one that I'm going to mention is a book called In God's Underground. And if any of you have heard of an organization called the Voice of Martyrs, the guy who started that organization, his name was Richard Wurmbrand. and he was a Jew, born again Jewish believer, and he was tortured for years in a Nazi prison camp, and he tells his whole story. And the reason, of course, I recommend this for just personal growth as a Christian, but again, it applies to marriage, because another problem in marriage is feeling sorry for yourself. You look at your situation and you feel sorry because your husband's not like so-and-so's, or your wife is not like so-and-so's, and I'm mistreated, and you just feel sorry. You feel sorry for yourself. If you read this book, you will be 100% embarrassed that you have ever felt sorry for yourself. You will be completely embarrassed that you ever have felt sorry for yourself in your entire life, because when you read what this man went through and his attitude towards God and towards the people that were torturing him, there's no way that you can feel sorry for yourself. So I encourage you to read it. I think it will help you. And again, there are a lot more resources on that page. So just go to the website, Built to Last, the banner at the bottom. Click the link, and it'll have the PDF with all of those links.
Just the last thing, with marriage, with any stage of life you're in, we joke about I think I've told several people, I like to joke that if they would allow, I would have been a Navy SEAL. I would have made it. And then I watched a couple of those videos. I was like, no, you wouldn't have made it. The water would have done me in, plus 100 other things. But, I like to pretend that I'm strong and brave and courageous like the Navy SEALs. And, when you are feeling sorry for yourself, if you do stuff like that, you'll read that book. I read several books. When I'm trying to feel sorry, I feel it sneaking up. And you notice this because you're unhappy with things. You look at, you're in America, you should be happy just to be in America. But you look around, you have the house, you have the car, you have someone laying next to you, or you have children. Everything's pretty much good for us in this country. And so when you read something like that, it kind of reignites that fire in the gut, that push through. And that's why I love the Navy SEALs and our military, is they have that fire in the gut. That's the people that you want to go in the trenches with. If tomorrow the whole thing started collapsing, I want to be in the trenches with someone who's in the military, because they have that push through when it gets tough. And we've lost that as a society. I feel like we need to get tougher, and we need to push through, and we need to fight for our relationship with God, our marriage, our children. And so what if it's tough? I mean, it's tough. And if you go around the world, 3/4 of the world really have it tough. We don't have it tough. I mean, if you go to Haiti, where they are, Mike and Mandy Korlove are, they have it tough. There's another book, Kisses for Katie. She was a 19-year-old girl, went to the mission field, and she was helping orphans, and she would pick bugs out from under their skin, little mites that would get because they were so dirty. That's tough. Not knowing where your next meal, that's tough. 90% of us do not have it tough. So it's your emotions, and you need to get a hold of it, and you need to get that fire in the gut and push through. And because we're human, we're not always going to be at 100%. You need voices in your life that are going to speak wisdom. You need books. You need resources. You're not Superman or Superwoman. And we have down days, and thank God most of our, maybe a slump will last for a couple months where I'm just not feeling it. I want to run away and just like, I want to go live in Destin, Florida, and prop my feet up and just watch the waves. I don't care if it's January, And he has times when he wants to quit. You have to be strong for one another, but you have to be strong for yourself. And when I get to heaven and I look Jesus in the eye, I just want to have that feeling that I did it. I did life on earth. Everything you asked me, I wasn't perfect, but in your grace and mercy, I did it. I don't want to be embarrassed.
Amen. And on these resources, we went through a bunch of them. Obviously, they're ones that are going to speak to different things that you're going through. You don't get overwhelmed and feel like, I've got to read them all or listen to them all. You just find where you're at and what you're dealing with that's most urgent, most difficult, and start there. and work your way through. I would say if you want something that's going to just kind of cover everything, it would be that Real Marriage series, the first one I mentioned. It's going to briefly, it is 11 sermons. I have them in audio and video there for you. You can watch them either way.